But thank you so much for joining us today. If you've been to any of our other grad school prep series this week, I hope you enjoyed it. I know this is a busy time as a lot of y'all's applications are starting to run through. So hopefully this has been helpful. And again, I will send this presentation out afterwards if you have any more questions. But my name is Ellie Wood. I am an Assistant Director of Career Development here at the Michelin Career Center. If you've not been here before, we're located on the 3rd floor of the Hendricks Student Center. And actually today we are having a bit of a Halloween door decorating contest and trick-or-treating. So feel free to swing by and get some candy on this gloomy day. But today we will be talking about personal statements. So just to get us going here, over at the Career Center, we talk a lot about these 9 different competencies. And so what we mean by this is you might have heard them referred to as transferable skills, but essentially Clemson, along with a couple of different universities, have done some research on what different employers and schools are looking for when it comes to their applicants. And we have pinpointed these 9 different competencies. And today, when we look at personal statements, we're going to be focusing on communication, self-awareness, and brand. You might, depending on the different types of programs you're applying for, talk about these different pieces like analytical skills and technology, but across the board, these are the 3 that we're going to focus on. So what is a personal statement? So a personal statement is a document that overall is explaining why you're applying to graduate professional school. And you often will see this in a couple of different ways, depending on the program that you're applying to. Sometimes it's going to be personalized and tailored by each school. So each one will have a very specific prompt, or it might be for dental school. I know it's kind of like a Common App where you're going to send one personal statement to all the different schools, but definitely pay attention to those little details because it really can depend on the school. So what is a personal statement? It's an opportunity to showcase your personality and unique story. So oftentimes with these applications, you're going to have a chance to submit your resume, list out your different experiences, and the personal statement is a great place to be able to showcase different aspects of your personality and your story that might not come across in those different aspects of the application. And again, like I said, you really want to pay attention to the details depending on the school and depending on the type of program. Because one of the most common issues that we see with students is that they haven't paid attention to the prompt. And so they maybe miss the character limit, had too many words, and you definitely do not want to do that when submitting your application to a school. So again, just make sure you're paying attention to those little details. All right, so some of you might just now be getting started with this process and beginning to think about how to write your personal statement. These are some different questions to really ask yourself as you begin through that process. So you want to think about those moments in your life that have really led you to where you are today as you are applying to that specific school or specific program. So this can look like a couple different things, right? It can look like your extracurriculars. It might look like volunteer experiences, a personal story that's really impacted you. But really think about what are those moments in life that have caused me to want to apply to this program? How did I get to where I am today? And how can I showcase to a school or a different program why I'm applying to their school and what has gotten me to where I am today? So again, it can look like a couple different things, but you want to think about not only the experiences, but also those traits and characteristics that you've derived from those experiences that might make you stand out as an applicant. So again, I'm not going to go through each and every one of these questions because I'm going to send y'all this PowerPoint, but this is just a great place to start brainstorming what to talk about in your personal statement. So again, as I mentioned, it's really going to depend on the program, whether or not you're going to submit this general application or a specific school. And so obviously how you would write your personal statement might depend on what type of application it is. So if it's a general application, you might not have the chance to talk about that specific school and why you are applying to that specific school, but you are going to be able to talk about, why have you decided to become a dentist? That more general outlook. If it's a specific school, so I just met with a student who is applying to the USC Law School, and she wants to make sure in that statement that she ties it back to the school and the specifics. It shows that she's done her research. So you definitely want to pay attention to whether or not it's going to be a general application or a specific school. And if you get to the end of the line, you've kind of brainstormed, you've gotten all your thoughts down on a page, which is a great way to do it. Just go ahead and write up a draft, and you find that your word count's over, you have too many characters. It's a common thing that we see. And some little tips and tricks to kind of get around that is to really read through it out loud. That's a tip that I give to students a lot, is sit there and read it out loud and think to yourself, what are some of these words that might sound repetitive, or concepts that I've already stated a couple times throughout my different paragraphs? Or what are some of these superfluous words, those extra words that you throw in, like additionally or however, or whatever they might be? We all kind of have our own extra words that we go to. How can we cut that out to make sure that we are getting to the heart of what we want to say? Also, if you find that there are maybe some questions that you have, or some aspects that you maybe don't feel like you've gotten to, if there is an opportunity to email and offer follow-up, go ahead and do that, because that's only going to further show your interest for that school or that program. But again, I will probably emphasize it a couple more times. You really want to make sure you are getting within the character and word count that is offered. All right, so you're starting to write your first draft. Some of what I've already talked about is, again, answer the question or the prompt. Oftentimes, it's just going to be a personal statement, which someone like me, I prefer that. It's a little more open-ended. I have some more freedom in terms of what I want to talk about, but some other schools might have more specific prompts. And again, you want to make sure, ask yourself, after you've developed your personal statement, sit back and ask yourself, have I answered the prompt? Because we will find students that they have great content, they've really spent some time on their personal statement, but they haven't actually answered the prompt, and we have to rework it with them. So that's the first mistake you want to make sure that you avoid. Again, this is a chance to stress your unique qualities. So this is where you can include some elements from your personal history, your academic life, your volunteer experience. This is a time to really showcase who you are and why you are the way you are. So go ahead and use the space to do that. An easy way to get started is to think about, what is the theme that I want to get across in this personal statement? Whether or not it's, I've had a couple of stories that have caused me to want to be a lawyer. That's one thing, think about the theme that you're trying to get across. Maybe it's curiosity. That's a theme that has led you to want to apply to that school. But it's always helpful to have that thought beforehand and then shape your personal statement around it. Another good tip and trick is to hook them at the beginning. So oftentimes this is the chance to really be creative, write something that is going to draw the audience in and get them interested, because you have to think that they're probably reading hundreds of these, thousands of these a week. And so how can you make it that they want to spend time on your personal statement? They want to read it after reading that first introduction. So go ahead and hook them at the beginning. Think about a story that you can tell that will really draw the audience in. Additionally, you want to show them, not just tell them. And so what I mean by this is showcase your qualities. Show them how you think that this will make you a better lawyer, a better dentist, whatever it is. You want to show them, not just say it. So for example, don't just say that you have extensive research experience. Go ahead and tell a story there. briefly discuss some specific information that you've learned, some specific research methods, maybe tell a story about a class that you've taken. Don't just say that you have research experience, actually back it up. Again, kind of following along with that, you want to tell why, not what. So oftentimes I'll have students come in and they tell this beautiful story about maybe an impactful experience that they had when they were a child. But at the end of the day, I'm not necessarily learning anything about why they're applying to the program. I'm more so just learning about the story that they're telling. So you want to focus on how that story has shaped you, not just the story itself. Again, the traits and characteristics that you have learned from that experience, not just the experiences and the accomplishments themselves. And two, this is a great place to explain maybe some things that your application does not show. So if there are some places that you maybe felt like you didn't get to expand fully on your resume, or something that maybe doesn't belong on your resume, but still has impacted you in a serious way, this is the place to do that. There's some creativity allowed there. So these are just some common pitfalls that we find, grammatical errors. So if you are going to be applying to a master's school or a PhD or whatever it might be, you want to make sure that your writing is going to be up to par for someone who is applying to that level of school. So just make sure, have a friend read it, have us read it, but make sure that your grammar, your spelling, those little things are all good to go, because that's going to be one of the things that leaves a really big first impression on the reader, is whether or not you have your grammar and your spelling, your sentence structure, all those little things that we learned in middle school English, those are coming back to play here. So just make sure that you have that all ready for your application. Additionally, I've honed on this a lot, so I'm not going to go too far into it, but you want to make sure, if you are submitting the same personal statement to a bunch of different schools and maybe changing a bit, double check to make sure that you are getting the names of the school correctly. Make sure that you are personalizing it based on that specific school and why you're interested in that school. Again, not as relevant for something like a general application, but for those specific schools, you want to make sure you are trying to specialize and specify why you're interested in that school. So if the prompt, sometimes the prompt doesn't ask, why this school, just make sure your content's being specific to that school. And again, a personal statement is supposed to be about you, but it's still a place that you can show, like, my experiences have specifically prepared me to attend your school, and here's why. So that's just something to keep in mind. Keep it tailored if you can. You also want to avoid sounding like everyone else. So I touched on this a little later, but cliches, this isn't the time for cliches. There's definitely a time for cliches, and this is not it. So just think through your word choices, what you're getting across. And again, this is a space for you to be unique, to showcase you, who you are as a person, and uniquely you. So try to avoid those cliches. Now is not the time either to be shy or overly dramatic. So I know some folks, I have a friend that has a really hard time talking about herself, and you can tell throughout her personal statement when I read it that she was not confident in what she was saying. She was not confident in her skills, and right, that's one thing to be that way. That's something to work on personally, but you don't want that to come across in your personal statement. So you want to be confident that you are a good fit, and you want that to come across in your personal statement. Don't be obnoxious, don't be over the top there, but show that you believe in yourself, you believe your skills and experiences have led you towards applying to that program. Last, or almost last but not least, funny is hard to pull off in a personal statement. I have seen very few times where it really works. So I would say try to avoid being funny, which might sound harsh, but it's just a risk that isn't necessarily worth it when it comes out to it. So again, you want your writing to be professional. You want to come across as someone who is ready to take on graduate school. And so let your writing reflect that. And finally, don't appear unrealistic in your goals. So oftentimes students will talk about what they want to do in their future and how the school program is going to prepare them to do that. That's great. That's a great way to go about it, but make sure that you are just trying to stay realistic. Don't say you're here to change the whole entire field of neuropsychology. Make sure that you are staying within the realm of possibilities. Because too, you're going to the school for a reason, right? To learn. And so you want to make sure that even within that, there's some humility there. All right, so you have written that first draft. You have checked for grammar errors. As you can see here, that's going to be one of the first things that you do. As you're going through it, read it out loud. I've said that once, but do it. Do it again. It's so helpful to sit there and read out loud and ask yourself, is this sound the way that I want it to sound? Is it getting across what I want it to get across? Is it appealing to the eye? Make sure that you aren't having these giant blocks of information. You want it to be readable. You want the person reading it to be able to move through it, stay interested, and be excited about your application. So those are all just things to think about. And then have a friend, ask someone if it sounds like you. Does this sound like something that you would write, something that sounds like your story? And also get a friend who's going to be honest with you. Is it interesting? Did it keep them invested in the story? And I know this might sound silly, but it's even helpful to have someone read it out loud to you so that you can hear how someone else is going to read it. So these are all just things that you definitely should do after you write that first draft out. All right, so I know some of you might not want to hear this, but you're definitely going to want to write more than one draft. So give yourself some time. It's gonna take a couple iterations for you to get it the way that you want it. So make sure you leave room for that. One thing I will say, content over quantity. So make sure your word choice is exactly what you want to say. Don't use those, again, extraneous words. Get to the point of what you're saying, because like I said, people are reading thousands of these every day, and so you want to make sure that what you're getting across, what you want to get across, is getting across. And through that, you should also review and revise it many times. That's what we're here for. We have a bunch of great career counselors that are ready and willing to help read it with you, give you feedback and assistance. And it's fun for us to get to work a couple times through the drafts with you. So please do take advantage of the services that we offer here, because that's what we're here for. Another thing that I will send countless students to is Clemson's Writing Center. If you haven't checked that out, just go ahead and Google it and it'll pop right up, and you can make an appointment with them as well. And they're going to help you with some of those grammatical and spelling issues as well, because I know I haven't taken an English class since I was in high school, and so it's been a while, and it might be helpful to have someone read over something that I've written before I send it out. So these are the Career Center and the Writing Center are two things that you should definitely take advantage of. And two, like I said, leave room for you to be able to take a break and come back to it. If you are spending hours reading over that draft, sometimes the perfect thing that you need is to step away, go on a walk, hang out with a friend, and come back to it another day with fresh eyes so that you can see what you wrote with clear and fresh eyes. So again, plan for multiple drafts. I know it's not what you want to hear, but it will make your application better in the long run. All right, so I added a little bit of a section here on diversity statements just because I know a lot of programs out there are asking for this now. This is just becoming more and more common, so I wanted to make sure I address it, because oftentimes you'll get some space for a personal statement and a diversity statement. So a diversity statement is an opportunity to share some diverse experiences that you've had. It's a place to encourage diversity of people, thought, and opportunities. So again, diversity can come in so many different ways. And so if you have the opportunity to have a diversity statement, think about the different ways that have created you to be who you are and how that's impacted the ways in which you see the world. So again, this is a great space to be creative and make sure it's truthful, relevant, and important to who you are, right? So you want to write about things that you feel comfortable writing about, but also can write about. So make sure you're leaving room for reflection here as you go into writing a diversity statement. So just some different ideas to get you started there. Maybe you've lived in the same place your entire life up until this point, or maybe you grew up in a lot of different places, moving around with your family. All of those experiences is a great thing to talk about if it shaped who you are today and how you see the world. Just start to think about, what are some of those unique experiences that you've had growing up that have shaped you to be who you are. Also think about where have you had opportunities to experience diverse groups of people and how has that shaped how you will serve people in the future, whether that is, again, as a bioengineer or as a lawyer or a doctor, whatever it is. How has your experiences with diversity shaped how you hope to serve people in the future in whatever role that you will be in? And what are the different things that has shaped your worldview? So these are all spaces and just ideas to start to think about as you go about writing your diversity statement. So again, just consider including some of your own personal background, how this has contributed to your view of the world. It can look like so many different things, race, gender, religion, so many different backgrounds that might contribute to your worldview. Academic experiences, maybe you are going in to apply with a very untraditional major. That has probably shaped your worldview. So this is the space to talk about that. If it's relevant, you're comfortable with it, this is also the space to disclose something about your identity that maybe doesn't come across in different places in your application. And how does that impact your experiences? Really just anything else that has contributed to your perspective and shaped how you will serve or work in the future. These are all just great things to think about and brainstorm as you go through this process. So I know that was a whirlwind. I just ran through a lot of different things in a short amount of time. I want to make sure I leave room for questions because I know that this is it. Everyone has different experiences with this. Everyone's probably applying to different programs. So I want to leave room for space for that, but I do want to talk about, again, the virtual services that we offer at the Career Center. Right now, we're offering in-person and virtual appointments. So if you're hoping to get either your resume or your personal statement reviewed by a counselor, go ahead and jot down that email because that is going to be so helpful for you. We'll get you scheduled with a one-on-one appointment to come in and review your personal statement with a counselor. We would love to do that for you. Also, we have virtual drop-ins right now, Monday through Friday from 1:30 to 3:45 p.m. You can find that drop-in, if you choose to do it virtually, you can find that link on the chat on our website. So go ahead and do that. You also, again, can come in person and we would be more than happy to speak with you. And just the same as appointments, you'll actually be meeting one-on-one with someone. So please do take advantage of that service because we would be overjoyed to help you. And again, if you come today, you get free candy. So feel free to stop by. And speaking of diversity statements, this is ours. We strive to serve students from all different backgrounds, all different places. And if you have suggestions for room for improvement there, please do let us know. We're always hoping to grow and learn. But I hope that this has been helpful for y'all. Again, we have a lot of room for questions, so feel free to unmute or drop your questions in the chat and I will try my best to answer them. I will also be sending this PowerPoint to y'all afterwards. So if you did not get everything down, you will have that as well. But thank you so much, and I will take any questions.
I had a couple of questions.
Yes.
My first one is in terms of like the diversity statement, when you said like talk about experience that have adapted you in a way, like I know that probably a lot of people are going to mention COVID as being something. How would you like go about that so that it doesn't sound like everyone else? Because I think I'm like struggling on how to necessarily like say what I experienced during COVID, I guess, without making it seem like they're gonna get a bunch of applications about COVID.
That is an excellent question. So I think you're right. That is something common that we have seen because it, like we all know, was a huge impactful factor in all of our lives. So I think if you do choose to use your diversity statement to talk about that, incorporate some of the different aspects of uniquely your life that COVID has impacted. So rather than, focus on just the pandemic as a whole, more so think about, how has that shaped some other aspects of your identity as well. So almost think of it as like intersectional, and be specific. So if it is something that has maybe really impacted your family, there's a space to talk about that as well. Does that help? Does that help answer your question?
Yeah, I just didn't know if like you recommended just not doing that at all, because I know that it's probably like I know it was like my sister just applied to college like undergrad, so like they said that's a big thing that undergraduate colleges are hearing about is all the COVID stuff. So I just didn't know if you advised against it or not.
Let's see. So my colleague's in here as well, and she'll give us a good second opinion. Heather, what says you?
So I was just going to chime in here. We've had a lot of discussions with employers and recruiters and people looking at folks for grad school. And what they're telling us that, because you bring up that valid point, we all went through the pandemic and we all experienced similar things, but also very different things. What they're really looking for is not only how did it impact you, but what did you do that was above and beyond what others might have done. Some people might have just kicked back and said, well, it's a pandemic, I'm not going to do anything. I'm not really, I don't have anything I can do. Some people went off and like took an extra class online or, took some diversity series workshops or something like that. So anything that, if you are going to touch on it, anything of how it impacted you, but what you did in addition to that can help you kind of elevate the answer just a little bit. So I don't know if that helps at all. Everyone's experiencing it, but it still has been an impactful situation. So it's really okay if you want to include it. You certainly don't have to, though. Does that help?
That's very helpful. Thank you. And I had one other question, if that's okay. In our personal statements, like, would you recommend that we reference to our resume, or should we just strictly like keep it to more like the experience and not necessarily like talk about the like different things in our resume?
So I would say this is the chance to, it's fine if, say, you talk about an experience that is mentioned in your resume, but again, this is like you want to add new information and expand upon that experience in ways that maybe your resume doesn't show. So like, for instance, I could have on my resume a job I had in college and kind of list some of those things that I did there, but on my resume, I'm not necessarily telling how that has shaped my personality, my development, why I'm here doing what I'm doing today. So you don't want to you want to expand again on how that has shaped you versus what you did in that role. It's fine. You want to give some context, give some information there, but don't let that be the bulk of your personal statement.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Anybody else? Oh, okay. Brantley, as a non-traditional student married with children. Oh, that is a different question. I see. What is a good? Okay, we have another question. Brantley, I will address that question directly. Okay. What is a good word length, word count for a personal statement? So hopefully you're going to find that some of the different programs are going to specify that. We suggest, though, if it does not specify, shoot for no more than 2 pages double space. That's generally what we say. Hopefully there again will be word counts added, but if not, 2 pages double space. Anybody else?
You have one more in the chat.
Okay, Brantley, I've been told there is a difference between a personal statement and a statement of purpose. One being focused on your story and the other one being focused on your reason for wanting to attend graduate school. Is this true, or do most places use the terms interchangeably? From my experience, they are mostly used interchangeably. Heather, do you have any new information on that? I would say for the most part, they generally mean the same thing. But Heather, what do you have to say about that?
In general, the way you phrased it, Brantley, is kind of how I would differentiate, but for the most part, most of the applications that I've seen are using them interchangeably. When you're thinking about a personal statement, sometimes people will look at that as being your story and why you're a good candidate. Statement of purpose is more of your story, why you're a good candidate, and the impact that you hope to have within the field or the community. But honestly, most of the time when I see it listed, it means the same thing unless they have additional questions under the prompt. So just making sure you read, I think that's the main thing, and making sure you're answering the question. You're welcome.
Anybody else? Don't be shy. All right, well, if that's all the questions that we have, going once, going twice, feel free to follow up with any questions. Again, I'm going to send out this PowerPoint so that y'all have it. And if you were able to see the survey link, we would really appreciate it if you would take that. But thank you guys for attending. I hope you have a great weekend ahead of you.